And Dr. Granpeesheh, you were in the middle of a wonderful explanation. I'm going to go back through the question, and I'm going to ask you to pick up before you where you left off. The Because they wrote in some more. So the question was, a parent wrote in and said that their son is 6-year-old, speaks in full sentences, and is making great improvement in social interactions and academics when he's focused. But the biggest challenge is that he switches into imagination mode, and it's hard to break him out of that. They specify that this is happening in school, but that the only thing that gets him out of it is his imagination mode, is something exciting, stimulating, or from his special interests. And so you were talking about that. I want to say that they wrote in and said, I want him to be able to learn to lose himself in his imagination when it's appropriate, on the bus, in the tub, lazy Sunday afternoon, etc. But he doesn't get this and does it anytime. So do you want to continue where you left off?
Yeah. And I guess I'll restart and I'll talk about this whole process is based on this kind of psychological process that's called cognitive flexibility. And cognitive flexibility is something actually it's a developmental process. We learn it early in life, and he needs to practice it and get better at it. And it has to do with being able to move thoughts around in your mind. And it's completely fine for him to be in imagination mode. A lot of kids are, and as we age, we get less and less in imagination mode, except for those folks who are very, very creative, obviously. But what you have to focus on teaching him is how to get himself out of imagination mode in environments where it's not appropriate socially, right? So in the classroom, perhaps, or when you're talking to him, or when he has to focus and do something that's timed. There's lots of situations in life where we have to focus on something that's going on and can't be in, as you call it, imagination mode. And so I recommend two different things as usual. One is there's a number of activities that you can do with him. You can certainly go to a psychologist if you want, and I would start by asking for an evaluation of set shifting, psychological flexibility or cognitive flexibility, set shifting. Set shifting really has to do with moving our mind around from one type of activity to another. There are several tests that are used to evaluate whether a person has difficulty with set shifting. There's a test called the Wisconsin card sorting test. There's another one that's called the Stroop. A psychologist can give your child these and see if your child is able to go between two cognitive sets. So two different types of thoughts, like numbers and letters, or watching something and responding versus hearing something and responding. So they can test for that, but in the meantime, you can also do activities to strengthen that. And there's a lot of activities you can do. They're listed if you go on our skills platform, Skills for Autism, which we can give you the URL or website for it. And you can go on there, and if you go in the section for cognition, or even actually in the section for executive functions, because this is a form of executive function. And if you go in that curriculum area, you'll find a series of lessons that fall under flexibility. And this is one of those. This falls under mind flexibility. And it'll give you a lot of different activities and ideas for things you can do. At the same time, you want to always make sure that there's, if there is a way for you to help your child medically, you also need to look at that. So there's a possibility. This is something that a lot of folks with ADHD struggle with. And it might be a good idea if you're going to see a psychologist or psychiatrist to get an evaluation for possible attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now, I want to say people always assume that a person needs to be hyperactive in order to get that diagnosis, and that's not the case. The hyperactive version of ADHD is just one form of it. You can also have attention deficit with just inattention, which could be this. Now, there's nothing, I don't want you to get scared because I'm throwing a lot of names at you. It's not a scary thing, it's just practice. It's kind of like language, right? We learn language through practice. And so you can certainly do a lot of different types of activities that will get his brain to move in between cognitive shifts faster. And so that's kind of what I was explaining when we lost electricity.
There we go. Speaking of which, speaking of ADHD and medication, Autism Journey with Elijah wrote in and said, I'm sorry I'm not home, and off the top of my head, I don't know the dosage that her child takes of guanfacine for his guanfacine for ADHD. One full crush tablet every morning. Is there a time where he will get used to it enough? And then I'm not sure, but they said he needs to change, and how can the change affect him and the family with adjusting? And that they did upgrade from a half of a pill to the full dose.
Yeah, so guanfacine is a non-stimulant medication for ADHD, and it's a unique medication. It doesn't work for every child. It does sometimes, and it's usually not something that is administered as the child gets older or bigger. So you might want to talk to your psychiatrist who is this is under their control, who is giving you the guanfacine. And if you don't see the effect of it, then there are lots of other options which your child could potentially benefit from. Obviously, there are the stimulant drugs, so Ritalin, Adderall, Vyvanse, etc. But then there's also classes of serotonin reuptake inhibitors that work with ADHD, like Strattera. So you really should talk to your psychiatrist, and they can help you with these medications. It's important not to do anything sudden with any of these, like you have to fade in or fade out. So I don't really know. You might be in the phase of fading in and gradually increasing the dose and see how it continues to go for him.
Now, is this the same? Because I'm not sure. Is it guanfacine? Is what you're saying? Is that the same thing that's in Mucinex?
No. That's a completely different thing.
Okay.
Guanfacine is for ADHD. It's a medication.
That must be guanfacine. Yeah. It's a very similar sounding thing. Okay.
It is. Yeah.
Well, okay. Sorry, sidetracked. They also said that he all of a sudden has started to get car sick, which is weird to us, and that now we take breaks often, that 2 hours seems to be the limit, and that then he gets car sick. I want to go back to...
the car sick thing, I mean, we should... this is one of those things that is important to pay attention to, because getting dizzy or car sick a lot of times has to do with... the ears, and so it would be pretty important, I think, to have his ears checked, because sometimes it has to do with like problems with fluid in the inner ear. So let's just make sure he doesn't have an ear infection or something like that going on.
Amen to that. NJZ said, good afternoon. My son is potty trained. While at home, he always tells us when he has to go, and he goes. However, at the ABA Center, he has been peeing in his pants and laughing. They go on to say it was his first time back at the center in almost a week because he was sick. I am concerned that he's doing this because he's having emotional distress at the center. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I don't know that I would... we always worry when things like that happen. I'm not sure that I would say he's having emotional distress. But to me, because he's laughing after he does it, he's controlling the situation in a way, and he's kind of like playing, let's say, with the folks who are there. So the question really is, when he wets himself and laughs, what do they do? Likely they are obviously either, I mean, you have to answer that for me, because it's possible that by wetting himself, it prolongs how long you stay, and maybe he wants you to stay longer. Maybe they take him to the bathroom and change him, and he gets to avoid doing work lessons. Maybe there's something else in the bathroom that he's enjoying. Maybe he's just attention seeking. So there's a lot of stuff that could be leading to this. And I would, you're in an ABA center, so I really would recommend that you have the BCBA, the supervisor who is there, do a functional assessment of the behavior to figure out exactly what's controlling this behavior. A lot of times our kids do these behaviors and we're like, what is going on? And the way to figure out what is going on is always by looking at the things that are happening before and after. Is he getting attention? Is he getting access to something? Is he avoiding something else? Is he prolonging some activity? Those types of things are very important to look at so that you can figure out exactly what's going on.
Wonderful. Esther has written in and said, my 4-year-old son loves music and currently loves singing The Ants Go Marching. It's really cute, but he will keep singing it over and over. How do I get him to sing it just once and then stop? And then can you teach this to me? I had Green Day Basket Case playing in my head over and over and over yesterday. I couldn't get it to
Hey,
stop.
the songs that you have had in your head lately, Shannon,
I
I
know.
swear, the
I
chorus
know. Alice
one from,
Sklar de Commissar. Yes.
yeah. No, I mean, the thing with our kids is, I think you just have, and I don't, again, this is one of those scenarios where I don't know enough about the child. Maybe parent can tell us age and comprehension level, because it's you basically need to have a visual for number of times so that the child is like, okay, you're allowed to sing it one time, and then you reward that, right? And you get it under what we call SD control. So if they sing it one time, they get a reward. If they continue singing it, the reward is taken away. And that's essentially your child getting the message that, oh, I'm allowed to do it once, but you will need to do it intermittently during the day, or you will need to redirect him to some activity that involves music, because clearly he's really into the singing and the music and all that sort of stuff. So clearly you need to give him that out, or the ability to engage with music when it's appropriate. But when he is singing it repeatedly, you want to be able to stop him. And obviously here's a task that is incompatible with singing is talking. So if you can get him to answer questions or do things that he can respond to vocally, that's where you go. And believe me, if you ask him a bunch of questions, he's going to stop singing, because now every single time he sings, you're placing a demand on him. So again, it depends on what your child's verbal ability is.
There we go. Another question that we had, our OT has us dry brushing my 7-year-old several times a day. We notice that he is calmer. Why is that?
Interesting. So that's great. I'm so glad that you discovered that. For some kids, that sensory input, and actually for some people, not just our kids, but a lot of us, the sensory input from dry brushing on the skin is very calming. And this is the whole thing we talk about with sensory dysregulation with our kids. Their senses are dysregulated. It's just that simple. And so I don't know if you guys have ever had the feeling where, I don't know what causes this feeling. Maybe if you have not sleeping enough, or if you're getting sick, or those types of things, and you feel like your skin's crawling. A lot of times I think our kids experience those types of sensory things, which are very disruptive if they're occurring all the time, right? So things like brushing, rolling, massages, all that kind of stuff tends to be very calming. And thank you for actually reminding me of the dry brush, because right after this, I'm gonna suggest it to one of our kids, one of the parents of one of my kids that I treat, because he needs something like that as well, and it's very likely it might calm him.
And where do you get, because I've heard people talk about them
Oh,
and I've seen them, but I don't know where you get them. Where do you get them?
you can, lots of places. First of all, they're available on all the different, places where you buy sensory stimuli for kids on the spectrum. But so, I would imagine Stages Learning also has all the places online where you can buy the various nooks and things for our kids, but you can also buy them online just at Amazon. You can just put in a dry brush, because it is something that is used in massage.
Amazing. So, when we're talking about sensory needs, sometimes I think it's important for us to own that we all have sensory needs.
Oh,
Um,
for sure.
and I talk way too much about myself, but like, I would love to hear, like, what's a sensory need that you have?
Um, let's see. I guess, I mean, okay, so I am one of those people that loves a good massage. So I will always go for a massage. But you know how sometimes when you go to like a spa and they do a massage, they'll also do a wrap. I can't handle a wrap for a minute. Like if I am wrapped in something, I feel immediately claustrophobic and need to get out. Whereas like my husband, he loves getting a wrap. On the other hand, like I really enjoy a facial, because I love that when like the feeling of what are those, creams that are kind of rough on your skin.
Oh,
And
the
my husband, for
exfoliating
instance,
ones.
hates a facial. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
So I think people have different sensory needs. Here's another example. Like my husband, he wakes up, the first thing he does is turn on music, right? I mean, he lives with music in the background all the time. And I think that's very calming for him. For me, I just had an example of some sensory things that really, really, really bother me. One of the things that I have very sensitive hearing, Shannon. So like if somebody leaves the fan on in a bathroom, it seriously distracts me. It disturbs me. Like I can't focus because I can hear the fan.
Yeah.
And to other people, it doesn't bother them at all. So, I mean, these are some examples. I remember the first time I met Professor Ibar Lovas, the entire time we were talking, he was doing this with his pen, kind of like shaking it like that. And I was like, okay, that's like by definition, that could be a self-stimulatory behavior,
Yeah.
repetitive, But we all do. We all like, moving your leg around when you're seated. People who like crack their knuckles. These are all like sensory input things that we do.
Yeah. And I love talking about that because I want to normalize it. I know I was at a conference not too long ago and somebody stood up and said, "What do you do when you're trying to explain to a parent that oftentimes parents will come and say, my child is doing this repetitive behavior and I need for you to get it to stop." That
Yeah,
seems to be a big thing. And the interesting thing is we have parents in two camps right now. Parents who say, I need you to get that sensory behavior to stop. And then parents who say, my child is doing that sensory behavior because they need to, don't mess with it at all.
yeah,
And I would love to see everybody get somewhere in the middle where we allow kids to do what they need for sensory things, but we don't allow it to be something that prevents them from leading the rest of their lives.
that's exactly right. You just summarized it perfectly. It's like, we all kind of have to live within the rules of society to some extent, right? So, yes, our kids have more needs and maybe they can do things. I remember, I think it was someone that I diagnosed, who had come to me as an adult. I remember now, yes, it was someone who actually used to work at CART and had come to me as an adult and had asked and said, I think I have autism. And I diagnosed him. And it was very interesting because he then divulged all this stuff to me that I didn't know, where it would literally take him several hours every day because he did these routines when he got home. And these were very calming for him. And if he didn't do them, he was very dysregulated, but he was he was asking for help to stop doing these routines because they took so long
Yeah.
that he didn't have time for social life.
Yeah.
And I remember telling him, well, you kind of have to like balance it out. And obviously, I'm really glad that you want to have a social life, but these things are also important. It's kind of like people who need more sleep or
Yes.
less sleep,
Yeah.
so we all kind of learn over time to do the things that help us regulate ourselves to a point where we can function in society and do okay.
Yeah. Really important that we talk about the sensory needs. I want to take this opportunity to thank you. We've got one more show left in this year with you. Next week, we're going to have you back in the studio, which we're really looking for. I always love the last show of the year, and we should have some fun and maybe some surprises. So love that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I also want to say that on tomorrow's show, I kept putting you guys off about who's on Wednesday. We are doing a special Hanukkah episode tomorrow, and
Nice.
we're going to be welcoming the Asners, the Asner Paskowitz here with us. They're going to be talking about their new event because they do It's a Wonderful Life every year. And this year, you have a rare opportunity. If you missed any of the 3 years in the past, they're having an opportunity for you to rent their versions, one with Pete Davidson, one with who's Ted Lasso? Um,
Oh,
Jason
yes.
Sudeikis. And then the last one, the guy who won the Oscar for The Whale. I'm having a total brain bubble.
Oh, wow.
Brendan
Those are
Fraser.
very impressive
Oh my
people.
gosh, all three of them took a turn at playing George, and you can rent any of the episodes and see there's some very funny stuff. If you listened to my review last year about Seth Rogen, who was great in the first act and not so great in the second act, and postulating why that might have been, you can see that
Right.
now. He
That's
played
awesome.
Clarence. You can see that. You can rent that. So they're going to be here tomorrow talking about that and their upcoming Christmas event, which we have been able to donate a bunch of toys to, which is really wonderful. Then on Monday, we're having Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is going to be here with us live, which that hasn't happened in a month of Sundays. So that'll be really fun. And then Tuesday, it's the icing, the cherry on the cake. It's the whole thing. We get to have Dr. Granpeesheh back, and we'll ring the holiday season in and out, and Happy New Year, and be done for the year. But then we're going to be back in January. We already have Dr. Temple Grandin going to be joining us in January, so that's going to be fun. So you'll want to stay tuned for all of that and messages about that. But Dr. Granpeesheh, thank you so much for being
Thank
here,
you.
and
Thank you, Shannon,
go
and thank you, everyone.
go back to being in the sun, please. Uh,
Sure.
all right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye bye for now. If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.